Welcome to the Hernia Gods Podcast. This is your mere mortal host, Luke Elms. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this podcast belong solely to the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy, position, or opinions of Orlando Health or any of our employers. And now, without further ado, let's talk hernias. All right, welcome to another episode of the Hernia Gods Podcast. I'm your mere mortal host, Luke Elms, and I am joined today by the extremely cool Ileana Geogloman. I think I did okay.
Yes.
2 for 2.
Thank you very much for inviting me, dear Luke. And hello to all our friends who are listening to us today.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on. The Hernia Gods Podcast has now gone international. So you're recording from Europe, and I'm here in sunny Orlando, Florida. I appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk to us a little bit about your background and your practice. So if you don't mind, give us a little bit of your history and how you got where you are.
Thank you. I am originally from Romania. I was born, raised there. That's where I studied medicine. That's where I decided before I studied medicine that I want to be a surgeon. And at some point, my dream to come to UK came true.
That's amazing.
When I was born, Romania was still a communist country. Mm. So having dreams was something of a luxury at the time. I come from a very modest family. My mother was a surgical nurse and my father was an engineer, building all sorts of equipment for artificial lakes and for bridges. The one who I think inspired me the most to become a surgeon was my mother.
Yeah.
As a nurse, she was a surgical nurse. She was working in the hospital where I started my surgical training initially as a nurse, as I mentioned before. What happened was, when I was about 3 years old, she was in a hospital with with gastric outlet obstruction due to kissing duodenal ulcers. So she had a major operation. And I remember the first moment when I saw her in a hospital bed after her operation. And I asked her, "Can I see your wound?" And she showed me her wound. And I wasn't scared at all. I was 3 years and a half, something like that. And I started asking her lots of questions about it.
That's incredible. I don't know that I would have been able to do that. I was even going into medical school, I was a little bit concerned because I would get queasy at some things, but I guess I just kind of got used to it.
Yeah, she was a tough cookie at the time, I can tell you.
Yeah.
She gave that kind of tough love.
Yeah. You probably had to be tough.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. How does it work if you decided before that you wanted to be a surgeon, but whenever you decided you wanted to pursue medicine, like what was the path that you had to take in your home country?
After you finish high school, you have to go through an exam. But there was another path that I've taken. In high school, I was in one of the top high schools in the country, and it was a very open-minded high school. What does it mean was the teachers were supporting you in pursuing certain subjects where they spotted that you were good at, and they were encouraging you to apply for international contests. They were called Olympiads, where you were participating at different levels and you were qualifying for national or international ones. Mm-hmm. And that's the path that I took in my last 2 years of high school. I went to biology and to chemistry. Both of these two subjects were really well supported in high school. I remember one of the prizes I got in the International Olympiad was dissection of an eye, and of an eye from an ox eye. Mm-hmm. That's where we were starting the practicing our practice on. And
believe it or not, the high school that I went to, we participated in the International Chemistry Olympiad, and our one of the professors at the Oklahoma School of Science and Math where I went was actually the U.S. coach. So I actually know a little bit about that. I was
Exactly.
definitely, let me be very clear, I did not even come close to qualifying. I was just wanting to pass at that school. So props to you for actually competing. That's awesome.
For us was quite a nice group of friends, and that glued us together a lot. For chemistry, it was really super fun. The teacher was a very special one. She used to give us all sorts of ideas to, including to make bombs and all sorts of gases that were diffusing towards the physics lab, and some of the instruments there were starting to rot.
That's hands on.
Yes, so that was one of the one of our aims. Let's see
You,
what kind of gases we can produce so we can
yeah,
destroy the physics,
yeah.
the physics
They,
lab.
I, I had a little bit of experience whenever I was in college. We had I was working in a lab, and we had LPS, to stimulate the division of white blood cells. And so my wife and I were both working in this lab, and we were working with the LPS. And I had taken it out from under the hood, and I thought I had the lid on, and I set it down, and the lid wasn't all the way on, and LPS like popped up in my face and gave me like instant sirs. I was like instantly didn't feel well. So you were talking about kind of so the school that you went to sounds like it was very supportive of that type of pursuit that you were interested in. But was that common, or was that a very rare thing in Romania at the time?
It was a very rare thing. There were just a handful of high schools that were supporting their students to pursue this kind of, I would say, pathways. And
And
the high school where I went, it was well known for that.
was that an application process, or were you selected? How did you end up there?
So going to that high school, you had to go through an exam. It was quite. The competition was around on one place. If I remember right, we were about 45 people that were competing for one place in that high school. It was well thought, and it's been like that for hundreds of years.
And how many
Even
people were in the
nowadays,
whole high school?
yes, yeah.
And that was it that so it was like the full high school experience, but how many students were there?
Um, so there were four. So we start high in Romania. We start high school in form 9,
Hmm.
10, 11, and 12,
Hmm.
and then you go to university. For each form, you would have about. So in our year, we were five, yeah, five groups.
Hmm.
And we were divided in two groups that were studying mainly mathematics, physics, so this kind of sciences. There were other two groups that were studying more linguistic subjects, so humanistic subjects, as we used to call them at the time.
Hmm.
And two other groups that were more focused on informatics. So
Yeah.
more computing, more a little bit of math. Um, Less physics and less chemistry.
And whenever you were, and so was the expectation coming out of that school that you would pursue higher level degrees? Was that
Yes.
it
Yeah.
was kind of a training school for that? Was that
Yes.
near where you grew up? Was that near your family, or did you have to move?
No, it was in the same. So I was born and bred in Bucharest. Bucharest is the capital of Romania. We used to live in a district. Still, my parents live there. Um, it used to be more or less the periphery of Bucharest. So to go to high school, I had to take a bus, but that was fine. It was the high school was in the center of Bucharest. Is in the center of Bucharest. Nowadays, as Bucharest has expanded significantly, is definitely not far away.
Yeah. Now,
So
so then you progressed on do you go directly from high school to university, or did you go into like a fast track university medical combo?
no, you go straight away to university. So you finish high school at about 18 years old, and then you go straight away into into university.
Mhm.
And as I mentioned, I chose medicine.
Nice. And were you wanting at that point? So when you chose medicine, was that you already knew that surgery was it for you?
Yes, yeah. I went to medicine to become a surgeon because I knew there was no other way of, of doing it.
That's great. And was there a specific, like, it was truly like was it your mother's illness that had, you were just like general surgeries, the one because of that experience, or was it other aspects of the subject that really interested you and pushed you in that direction?
What what has driven me to go towards surgery and general surgery in particular was the fact that you were able to deal with many other illnesses, many other digestive illnesses. And you were actually, for me, was the magic of being able to help someone, being able to give them hope, being able to give them another quality of life, being able to make an impact on their life, a positive impact on their life.
What was and so then after you went through medical school, then you went to a residency program?
Yes, yeah. Medical, you finish medical school, you have an exam, you have a dissertation, and then you have a national exam where, according to the score, you can choose your specialty and the place where you will study your specialty.
Was your residency program in Romania, or did you leave the country for that?
I started the residency program in Romania. I combined it with initially with a 3 month fellowship in Paris, in Saint Louis Hospital, and one of the upper GI. Well, it wasn't quite upper GI; it was general surgery and plastics unit. And then after that, I did 3 more years training in Romania, and I left for UK, where I finished my training. I came back and did my final exam, my CCT exam, which was at the time European recognized, including in UK, because UK was part of Europe at the time. And this is where I got the level of completion of training, CCT, that was required here as well to become a consultant.
Yeah.
What attracted me to UK was a dream, a little dream that I had when I was, I think, 10 years old when we started studying English at school, was the fact that it was an island, and the island was always a kingdom. And the other thing that attracted me here were the social etiquette that we were taught in school, that are in UK, that were born in UK and still were supposed to persist in UK. And as I mentioned, we're supposed to persist in UK.
Supposed to persist. Yeah. Yeah. I'm from the Panhandle of Oklahoma, and social etiquette, that is, we don't know much about, all I learned was that when you sat at a table with more than one utensil, you had to start on the outside and work your way in. That was the extent of my social etiquette training.
Yeah.
So do you have so then you went out of the residency, and you did a fellowship as well, that you went into. Did you go directly into practice then?
When I came to UK, I started from a lower level of training where I was in Romania. The reason for that was there are two different medical systems. The UK one is extremely structured in terms of protocols, in terms of steps that you have to follow, and that was extremely attractive to me. I love structure. I love simplicity, and this is what surgery is for me. Structure, simplicity. You have a certain set of skills that you have to use, and you should know how to use them in different situations.
Yeah.
And
Hernia surgery is interesting because of the way that it's progressed so much. There's so many ways to approach a problem. Does that
Yes.
excite you, or is that something that kind of flows against your simplicity, your leanings towards simplicity?
And no, I think hernia practice was the one that drew me more and more through the fact that we should still keep things very simple. If it looks anatomic, that's a correct if it looks functional and anatomic, that's a correct repair. If it doesn't look functional, if it doesn't look anatomic, something's wrong there.
I love that.
That's the concept that I have, and this is why we do the repair of hernias.
Yeah, so you're not a fan of bridging IPOMs, then, I'm assuming. Not so much.
I don't think so. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, no, that's the reason. One of the reasons I took up robotics is I was of the opinion, and still am to a certain extent. I'm sure there are patients, obviously, that's what you got to, that there's appropriate patient populations. But
Yes.
I always thought that the bridged IPOM repair, in my opinion, was always more of a incarceration prevention than it was a true hernia repair. And
Yes.
and I love the getting things back to the way they should be, restoring the order to the abdominal wall, so to speak.
Yeah. And also giving patients the degree of functionality that they should have, because that's really painful to see them in the clinic and to see how they struggle to get out of the bed.
Mm-hmm.
It is really something that we take every day for granted.
Mm-hmm. So you in your current practice, what's kind of the makeup of your current practice?
I receive referrals from primary care, so from family physicians, GP practices, with patients that are from all the backgrounds. Usually they come, we have quite a long waiting list of referrals. And the system, the NHS, is in a lot of pressure, especially after COVID. We have lots of patients that are overweight, morbidly obese, and it's very difficult to explain to them sometimes that, look, it's not just fixing a hole. It is more than that. And I often spend time with them looking through the CT scans to explain, to clearly visualize where the problem is, what is out of their abdomen, how much is out of their abdomen, and what do we need to do to bring everything back together. And I also explain to them that in certain circumstances, we're not able to restore everything back unless they lose weight. And I show them where that weight needs to be lost. And this is one way of engaging the patient in the process of starting losing weight. And by being honest with them in a couple of minutes, because I have 10, 15 minutes in the clinic maximum per patient, they by themselves sometimes come up with a solution. They said, yeah, now I know what I'm doing. Now I know what I have to do to lose weight. And it's fantastic. Looking through my practice, about 85 to 90% of them who are determined to have their operation and to want to regain their quality of life back, they come with 10, 15 kilos less than when I saw them first time. And this is sometimes just by simply changing their lifestyle, understanding that super processed food and fast food is not the way forward. And they started, some of them even told me, I took cooking classes and it's so much better. I'm saving so much money now. Some of them decided to quit smoking, and they quit smoking. Some of them had help from the GP, because there are lots of programs, national programs, to try to quit smoking, and they managed to get that as well on board. The ones who are really, really determined, they listen to you and they get engaged. And I endeavor to follow them up 3 months, 6 months, until they reach to the level where they want to be. Some of them never turn up to the follow-up, and that's where I know that they are not engaging.
Yeah, I think you've a couple of things you said really resonate with me. Um, it's I don't. It's not that I'm trying to limit access to a hernia repair, but as we've come more and more, or at least it's come more and more to my attention about the chronicity of hernia, even in patients who have repaired hernias, that it is a chronic disease, and you do need to continue to monitor, and that future decisions can impact the repair even years later. I do at times will push people for weight loss or smoking cessation, certainly, and some of it is to kind of make them show me that we can be a team in the process, because it is
Yes.
so important that they adhere to even the basic things like lifting restrictions.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's always so frustrating to have somebody come back. I've had patients come back with a recurrence and they're frustrated, but they went and played golf a week and a half after the surgery. And you're going, well, I mean, yes, ideally that would not have broken down. And I'm not saying that this is all your fault, but, this is part of the process, was to try and, not be going through that type of strain on the repair this early. But do you feel like in your system, at least over here, we have the ability to make referrals to bariatrics, and I refer to bariatrics frequently, and I use the hernia and the repair to try and have the patient commit to lifestyle changes that realistically I'm not 100% sure that the hernia repair is the most positive aspect. If I have somebody quit smoking at the age of 35, that the long-term consequences of them stopping the tobacco use may be higher than the long term of their hernia repair. But do you have access to the bariatrics or even the newer like medications? We struggle with getting insurance companies and programs to approve those types of modalities for weight loss over here in some of our patient populations.
It's difficult in UK as well because areas are centralized and bariatric practice has been centralized in NHS. Unless the patient pay privately, and some of them have done that. They even go abroad for bariatric surgery. They come back. It's sometimes of a doubtful quality because they're never followed up. They come back with no correct instructions, and I have to do all the investigations, post-op investigations, and look into certain microelements deficiencies. I need to reiterate to them that they need to take, if they had a bypass, for example, they need to take their multivitamins regularly. I have to write to the GP to check their B12 levels as well. So there are lots of things that if they have their operation somewhere abroad, we need to pick up all this stuff in the NHS. I don't have direct access to a bariatric center. I can make the referrals, and I've done that. And I had 3 patients that came back 2 years later with good results. But I also had a discussion with them before they'd seen the bariatric surgeon. Funny enough, all the 3 of them, they didn't have bypass, they had sleeve. And I discussed with them what's the difference between the two procedure as a long term.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted it as a start of their journey.
Mm-hmm.
And they got to the level where they wanted to be, to the level of exercise where they wanted to be, and their life has totally changed. But also their eating habits have changed. Their mentality has changed as well. Patients become extremely motivated when they want to have a better quality of life, and when they know that they will have a better quality of life. And that's a huge drive for them. Having this click, having the moment when they can see their body, looking at a CT scan and understanding where are the lungs, where's the heart, what's the fat in the abdominal wall, what's the intra-abdominal fat.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding that sometimes, as Todd Hanniford says, you can't just push back in a luggage all the clothes that you've gathered for the last 25 years.
Right.
Yeah, you won't be able to close that luggage, that suitcase.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing is for us when we repair the hernia. If you try to push something that has been outside for the last 10, 15 years, It's going to be very difficult, especially when you have loads of extra material inside that you're not going to use.
Right.
And they understand that, and they're extremely motivated. They're also, because I have to deal with a geriatric population, 78, 80 plus years old, and we need to be very, very careful with them as well. We need to be very, very diplomatic with them in terms of explaining how much resources they have, and potentially what resources we need from them as surgeons for them to heal, and what they want to achieve. I remember one of the patients, he was 78, diabetic, hypertensive, atrial fibrillation, and all the stuff, but he wanted to get rid of his back pain. He had the 6-centimeter umbilical hernia that he's been living with for a while, and also a huge diastasis. And I said, I can not only repair the hernia, we need to sort out the diastasis. I said, no problem. I'll lose 20 kilos. The GP, I also wrote to the GP to try GLP, the GLP-1 agonists, and he started using them. And when I saw him back in the clinic and we planned for the operation, he was absolutely a totally different person.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about the geriatric population. I see a fair amount as well. It's always the question I always have whenever I'm assessing them, of course, is trying to figure out what the goal is. Yeah. And many times I'll see these patients who are, octogenarians or even over 90, and they're very active. And I had one gentleman that came to me and said, I have a inguinal hernia, and I'm walking 2 miles a day, and he was in his upper 80s. I'm walking 2 miles a day, and now the hernia hurts, and so it hurts. And so I rarely in those cases will commit to surgery on a patient like that on the first visit. And I feel like there needs to be that rapport and kind of really get to know them, because it's really easy to kind of sometimes misassess somebody in 15 minutes, whereas a couple of times maybe you get a better picture about their functionality or what have you. But the next time I saw him, I said, well, how's your hernia doing? Are you having pain? It was like a month later. And he's just like, well, my hernia doesn't hurt anymore. I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe we can watch this. And he was like, yep, as soon as I stopped walking, it stopped hurting. And I was like, I said, frankly, you walking 2 miles a day at your age is probably why you are your age.
And, yeah, exactly.
And so we pursued surgery.
Yeah.
And he recovered well until 2 weeks after, when he had a perforated appendicitis that fistulized through the mesh, and he ended up with an X-lap. But, I stand by the first part of the decision making. The post-op definitely could have been better. But whenever you're in those situations with your patients in the clinic, I mean, it sounds like you take a significant pride in getting those relationships, and not just jumping straight to the operative repair, but really the patient relationship. Can you tell us a little bit about your approach and how you view that aspect of the care?
It's very important to understand the reason why the patients want the hernia to be repaired, because some of them with small umbilical hernias, for example, come to the clinic just because the GP has noticed that, and they wanted that to be checked, and they had that hernia for years. It's never changed, never caused them any problem, nothing. In those situations, I explain to them what are the main symptoms that they should think of, or they should be mindful of. And in those situations, we will repair those hernias. They know what to do and when to come to as an emergency, or when to go back to the GP to be re-referred. They're very rare cases, but yes, indeed, they happen. With regards to patients who are, again, elderly patients, multiple comorbidities that come with with hernias, let's say an inguinal hernia in a patient with cardiac insufficiency, who previously had a cardiac operation or who have pacemakers. Now, definitely in those situations, I balance the risk of the hernia becoming strangulated, thinking of their chronic conditions, if they have chronic coughs, if they have any lung condition potentially. Also discussing with them what's happening with that hernia. Has it been like that for the last 10 years, or it's getting bigger and bigger? Often you see that it's getting bigger and bigger. And also I bring into the discussion the anesthetist. Always, when I have doubts, I get the patients to be seen in high-risk anesthetic clinic. And I have a pretty good relationship with my anesthetist. And they get the patient for optimization. They get all the investigations necessary and all the plans to say, yes, the patient would be safe to be operated open or minimally invasive, because sometimes some of them will not withstand pneumoperitoneum. And what kind of anesthesia we can give them, spinal or local with some sedation. And they have an honest discussion with the patient, sometimes expressing the numbers, the risks, also the cardiovascular risks. And we take the decision together, all the three of us, patients with their next of kin, me and the anesthetist. And it is a good, it takes a while, but I think it's better for the patients to make a decision well informed. Because there's no point in me repairing a hernia and then the patient is no longer here.
Right. Yeah. I two things. One, I've definitely talked to people before and been like, well, I think you're underestimating the size of the surgery greatly.
Yes. Yeah.
And just because it's a fast surgery or, doesn't take 12 hours under anesthesia, it doesn't mean it's not risky. But the other thing you touched on there that we don't have here, and maybe other places do more than we do, but the high-risk anesthesia clinic, that's a really interesting concept. I mean, we have preoperative testing and our anesthesiologists, look over that, and we have APPs and things that we'll review. But realistically, we go back through kind of their primary care provider or cardiology and kind of piecemeal together this overall picture of their health and clearances, and not even clearances, right? Risk stratification is a better terminology, but that having that high risk anesthesia clinic, that has to be nice to be able to have that other perspective, because I think sometimes it is kind of you're kind of, again, over here we piecemeal together those types of decision making processes, and many times the problem that I run into is the patient will come back and say, my cardiologist cleared me, let's do the surgery. And we have to have the conversation like, they said that they think that you're X, Y, and Z risk, but ultimately it's still our decision on the overall picture of what's going on here. And so that type of discussion and collaboration that sounds like you guys have is something I would definitely welcome. The patient populations you're talking about, those are unforgiving populations. So patients, in the fact that a complication can happen despite your best efforts, and can happen quickly, and sometimes can be even pretty traumatic or difficult. How early in your career, now even back in training, how do you handle complications personally, not necessarily from a patient standpoint, from a personal standpoint as a physician?
Yeah, they're very difficult situations, but they make you become extremely resilient. They make you be very humble. I remember my phases of dealing with a complication was, initially I was angry of myself, and I can say that I developed the eighth sense when I feel that something is going to happen. And nowadays, during the operation, when I feel that something is not quite right, I stop. And I have in an abdominal wall reconstruction, I have several moments when I just stop for 30 seconds or more than that sometimes. In the initial phase, at the beginning of my career, I was extremely angry of myself. I was rehearsing in my head thousands and thousands of times, especially when I was going to bed and couldn't sleep because of that, the operation and the moment when it happened. But as I progressed in my career, I started talking more with my anesthetist. I started talking more with my assistant. Unfortunately, we're working in a system where your assistant is not the same all the time. I always call for help. Even in the middle of the night, for example, I have one of my colleagues whom I call for help. Even just a video call or a phone call, still, you have a friend, always call a friend. My husband is a vascular and general surgeon. He's several years older than me, so more experienced, but still we talk together about certain things. But I have my circle of good friends that I can talk with, because it's never good to bring certain things at home. It's better to keep them outside of home. And talking through the case with them, I can spot where some issues were, or sometimes when you have a patient who, for example, had 12 operations, all of them being extremely complicated, and you've done the 13th one, and the patient is not going well, there are multiple other problems.
Right.
I always listen to my intensivist colleagues when they say the patient is not right. The first moment, I always go to their handover. I always go to the board meeting in the morning after seeing the patient, and I always take apart every abnormal result, every abnormal observation. Why is the noradrenaline, or why he's still on this vasopressor? Can we reduce it? Why do they need that? Is there any focal infection there? Is there anything else we can correct? So it's always a good discussion with my colleagues. And I think that through this practice, you reduce your level of stress, first of all, but also you take more time in a calmer environment when you make a decision, when you make a very informed decision. It's not a very like a snapshot decision. It's an informed, calculated decision, done step by step. But always, it's very important to call for help.
Yeah, we so many good points in what you just said. One of the things that I utilize frequently. Luckily, my partner and I have a very good relationship, and we call each other frequently. We run things by each other that otherwise, on the surface wouldn't seem necessary to bring somebody else's opinion in on. But
Yes.
even in for instance, a gallbladder that's just a little bit of abnormal anatomy. I'm a big believer in the fact that that surgery is statistics. We're playing statistical games of anatomy in all of our surgeries. We're making assumptions about where things are, and if our initial assumption is wrong, then every decision after that has the potential to be catastrophic. And so, calling for help, I think that is something that I have utilized frequently. The other thing you said was about the anger that you experience when you have those complications. It is it's hard not to let that flow over into subsequent operations, especially in subsequent situations. And because I've seen it in myself, I've seen it in colleagues. You have a bad outcome, and the initial instinct is to overcompensate or undercompensate for the next procedure, whereas it may have just been a bad situation or that. But there's a level of it's a grieving process.
Yes.
And just like any grieving process, there are those stages. And the part when you were talking about bringing up the that you always trust your colleagues when they tell you that something's wrong. I think it's a very natural reaction for a lot of us to say it can't be, because it's so traumatic and it's so difficult for the amount of responsibility and the burden that we carry to try and do the right thing for our patients. And when something is going wrong, it's tough to think, oh my gosh, not again. You've had a complication, and then they always seem to come in groups. It's the most humbling thing.
Yeah. They come in threes or fours usually.
Yeah, and then and then the ownership that you described taking for all your patients, not just the complicated ones, but that ownership of really interacting with the other services. And it's interesting because at times other services have considered my participation at that level almost like overbearing or getting on their turf. But I'm much better now than I used to be of really expressing, like, listen, I'm not trying to doubt your judgment. I'm just trying to make sure, because there's more eyes on the problem.
Yes.
If they're well trained, it's better. And so I think that was super insightful. But the last thing I wanted to ask you about specifically regarding that is, you said it's better sometimes to keep those conversations out of your home.
Yes.
And specifically, you have a spouse that's also a surgeon, and I think it's hard for people that aren't surgeons, even within medicine, to understand what it is to be a surgeon. Just not saying I'm not saying they're not capable. I'm just saying it's different when it's you. Do you try to separate the work discussions in your personal life in that way?
In a way, yes. But for me and my husband, we both we love surgery. Like, it's part of our life on a regular basis. It's us. We have a very humorous way of looking at many things. And we love jokes. We always make a banter of ourselves, sometimes how we reacted in certain situations or what we did in certain situations. We end up working together or operating together or asking the opinion of each other at work. And we're extremely professional with each other. Most of the anesthetists, on Friday afternoon, for example, I have an all-day operating, and he has sometimes an afternoon operating. And it's the ongoing banter, which one of the G is going to finish first. It depends always on our cases, obviously, what's happening in theater, on how the turnover between the patients is. But it's a good thing of finding that peace in yourself as you progress through your career. It's a very good thing of having talks with yourself, acknowledging, first of all, with yourself when you're wrong, and putting your hand up and say, yeah, that was a mistake. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to do that next time. Or, I've done that mistake. How could I have handled it better? Yeah. What else could I have done in that situation to repair it or to recognize it? Or, have I reacted in a way that made things worse? And often that's the situation. Mm-hmm. Hence, I love listening to music in theaters, but also I love seeing the anesthetic monitor and seeing the anesthetist, what they're doing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I often tell them what stage of the operation I am. I have some of the anesthetists who are just watching the operation from top to bottom and asking me certain questions. Mm-hmm. Talking about gallbladders, I always tell my trainees, you don't trust gallbladders. They're like women. You never trust women, no? So,
if my wife listens to this, I'm not the one that said that. Just for the
exactly, yes.
For the record.
You see, always we have to bring some humor in our everyday life.
Absolutely, because if she thought I said that, it would not be humorous. Not at all. No,
Yeah.
I think
Uh,
my wife's a physician. We've operated together like twice.
yeah.
And it's funny because when we were training, my she was a OBGYN and I was in surgery obviously. And so they were doing a combined case. One of my mentors was doing a combined case with OB, and she was there participating in the gynecology portion of it. And afterwards she asked, can I stay and just help just stay to watch the gallbladder. And she's very talented surgically. In fact, at the end of our third year, when we were getting ready to apply, I was going to be applying to OB-GYN and she was going to be applying to surgery. And we flipped at the last minute, and that's all she wrote. And so he let her take the gallbladder off the liver. And she got to the very, very top and had done a great job. And at the very, very top, it folds on itself. And the standard, resident mistake, get into the dome, and there it all goes. And
Yeah.
he was so distraught. He was like, she was a centimeter away from me being able to lord it over you the rest of your career, that your wife can do a gallbladder better than you. So I came out, I was just like, thank goodness that you didn't see that plane correctly, or this would have been brutally, she would have held that over me forever. But yeah, I think it's interesting because I think there's some benefits to being married to someone in the medical field. There's also some downsides. The benefit is you do have that perspective of what you're going through. The downside is there's also times where like the anxieties like compound, because sometimes I come home and I just need somebody to be like, it's gonna be okay, and I'll share a story or something. She's like, oh, that's not good, and I'm like, that's not what I needed to hear right there. But one of the challenges that we've had throughout our careers is just how we balance being in a relationship, how we balance family through two very, very busy surgical careers. And I'm sure that you experience probably the same, I would assume. How has your career in surgery impacted that?
It was very interesting because when I started my medical school and when I started my residency, I never thought of getting married. And I loved surgery, but for me, it was the best thing that has happened in my life. And I was in a long-term relationship, and my boyfriend at the time, who was from high school, said that, oh, would be nice if you would be more at home. I was working, I had 36 hours with no sleep. I was working weekends. I was hardly seeing our friends. And they knew what I was doing. I was the only surgeon, more or less, from the group. The rest were working in economics, in IT. All of us were a group of friends from high school. And I was trying to explain to them that it's not easy. You need to be there by your patients. You need to learn. It's loads that you need to expose yourself to gain confidence and also to gain more experience. And you need to distinguish what is good and what not good practices. You learn how to do things and you learn how not to do things. And it's very tiring for your other half or the person that is going with you through. It's close to you in that period of time of your life. But often I developed this kind of selfishness where my only trust was in myself and what I was doing. And naturally, I'm an introvert person. I have moments when I want to come home and just to spend time with my family, with my husband and the children, and nothing else. Mm-hmm. We want just to be together to have that to regain that connection. It is difficult, but it needs to be a mutual understanding. And by developing that friendship, that strong bond, that helps a lot to have a balanced life, to have a balanced family, but also give you stability of decision at work. Knowing that, for example, today I'm free to pick up the children and come home and do all the stuff at home that we need to do. Gives my husband the peace of mind that he can finish his operating theater without, and he shouldn't rush through anything, or he can finish his clinic without rush. So having this, trying to juggle all this helps. I had a period of time of about 5 years after the children when I was a weekend mother. I was working during the week somewhere else, and my husband was with the children at home, at home. He was working, but he also had to look after them. For a short period of time, I had my mother who helped us, but then we were lucky enough to find a childminder whom looked after children from before 8 o'clock in the morning until many times after 6 o'clock.
Right.
But it is part of life. And the children, knowing what we're doing, they understand that and they grow with that, knowing that we're helping people. That's our job. One of them wants to become a colorectal surgeon. I don't know where it comes from because none of us is a colorectal surgeon specifically. I think she heard the colorectal surgeon song from the American what was it called? Not American Colorectal Society, because that's what we have here in UK, the Association of Colorectal Surgeons. Many years ago, there was a song, the colorectal surgeon song, that was played at one of the American surgical societies. And we discovered it many years ago, and we played it at home, and she loved that song. Yeah. And probably that's the reason why she wants to become a colorectal surgeon. Well, she likes to watch all the little YouTube clips that we're watching with surgeries. She's very much into, Mommy, what's on the International Hernia Collaboration today? And questions like this. Yeah. Our son is totally opposite. He doesn't want to see anything that is gory. He's into building, into environmentally friendly houses, cars, and everything to save the planet. So at least we've done something good.
I hope if my daughter takes on the same path and the songs that she likes determines her like career choice, she'll end up being a K-pop demon hunter. That's exactly that's where she'll end up. Because that's what we're on currently. I think you talk about being, you talked about like being a weekend mother. I was working, frequently earlier in my career, and I really thought that my children being younger, it wouldn't matter as much because I just my son's 2, he's not going to remember that much. And it wasn't until my wife, who was also extraordinarily busy, was just like, he acts differently when you're around more or less. And I was like, I get it. And you talk about the kids being different. Our daughter, she loves it. She walks around. She wants to pretend like she's doing C-sections. She wants to take care of babies. She's 5. And and then my son, who's 8, he was like, somebody asked him one time, I can't remember where, it was like in a store. They were just like, they knew that we were physicians or whatever. They said, what do you want to be? Do you want to be a physician like your mom? And he said, and he's just completely honest, he said, no. He goes, sometimes she goes to work and she doesn't come home for days. And he was just like, absolutely not. And I think that, I hope that our kids do gain that perspective as they get older, that when we're away, we're serving hopefully a greater purpose. We'd like to think so, at least. But also we've had to really be cautious. And one of the things that happened in our family is my wife has changed jobs multiple times. She has never once had to interview for a job, and she's never left a job that they wanted her to leave. But she has been the one in our family, out of the 2 of us, that has changed jobs to accommodate having children. And, and I think that's a sacrifice that she has made that I haven't had to. But she also struggles a lot with the feelings that, that the struggle, right, of balancing career, there's a level of you need to be present, you need to be actively engaged to be there, to be 100% there for your patients. And then there's
Yes.
also, you feel like you need to be 100% engaged to be there adequately for your family. And I mean, I
Yeah.
experienced that, but not nearly to the level that my wife does. And so I think that it's a very difficult thing. It's also very rewarding being a parent, but it's also difficult to do what we do and be in that situation.
It's another level of grit that we have to go through. It's another level of resilience that we build, and also it's another level of discovering ourselves and our way of distributing the energy, our way of being present, our way of understanding that there is no multitasking. And in the last 5 years, I understood that extremely well. When you have to do so many things in one day, there is no multitasking. You need to delegate block times for each thing that you have to do.
Yeah.
And it's
Do you feel like
difficult.
you're pulled away? Do you feel like you're just being pulled in multiple directions at all moments of your day, or have you been able to kind of reconcile those feelings? Obviously, there's professionally we get pulled in multiple directions all the time. Just from a very logistical standpoint, getting called from the
Yeah.
floor, getting called to the
Yeah.
operating room, getting called by my office to say this patient's calling in demanding a sooner surgery. Those types of things. Have you found have you been able to mitigate that feeling at all in your own life?
Yeah, I realized that there is no point in trying to do three things at the same time. You prioritize them. You understand which is the most important one at that moment in time, which is the one that is crucial, which is the one that needs sooner attention, and which is the one that needs attention not quite now in 2 or 3 hours,
Mm-hmm.
or later on in the evening when you can reply to that email.
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly everything we're doing when we're on call, prioritizing patients. It's exactly when you have to do three jobs at home and you prioritize which one is the most important now. And then you just need to say also, one thing that I've learned was to say politely no.
Mm-hmm.
And that has freed my head and my heart very much so.
Well, again, sincere gratitude that you said yes to this because it's been very enjoyable. I wanted to ask you. You serve as as a role within the American Hernia Society. It's equality and diversity, I believe. You're the head of equality and diversity for the American Hernia Society currently. Is that right?
Yeah, that's true. For me, American Hernia Society has been a springboard in the hernia field, but also has been the place where I gain most of my mentors. Uh, Most of the people that support me in this field are Americans, and I want to share with you a very very funny story. Um, Probably you heard about Victor Radu.
Yes.
Yes. Me and Victor Radu, we used to work in the same hospital in different departments at different levels. And he was very close to my mother. My mother was always there to support him, to talk to him about family, life, career, and everything else. And he saw me growing in this, in my role as a surgeon, even before I applied to medical school.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in UK and I had to deal with a complex hernia, a patient with a complex hernia, complex incisional hernia after a AAA repair, I contacted Victor. And he said, yeah, no problem. You need to do a TAR, bilateral TAR in this patient. I said, yeah, you need to do a bilateral TAR. It's not like this. You just do a bilateral TAR. I've never done that in my life. He said, right, these are the books that you need to read. And one of the books was the hernia book by first edition by Yuri Novitsky.
Yeah.
So I bought the book and I couldn't access the videos. So I sent a message on Messenger to Yuri I'm really sorry. You have a great book, and it's absolutely my Bible to go, but I can't access the videos." I said, "No problem." In an hour, I think he replied to me, "No problem. Here is the link." And
Yeah.
that was, I texted Victor back and said, "Yeah, that's Yuri."
Yeah.
And from that moment, at every meeting I met with Yuri, we exchanged a couple of ideas. And last year I came for an observership in his department at Columbia University in New York Presbyterian, and was absolutely an eye-opening. At American Hernia Society, also Conrad is one of the people that have supported me in my first cadaveric course. At the second, when the annual conference was at Charlotte for the second time. So that's where my history starts with the American Hernia Society.
You started right at the top.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. That's where I met David Lurie, and I often use his videos for teaching because they're incredible. And understanding the anatomy of the abdominal wall and the anatomy of the inguinal region is the fundamental thing that you should have as a surgeon. It was, for me, it's an incredible family. It's really an incredible family. And you see so many people that are inspiring through their work. In the committee, we support the society through assessing several applications for grant, especially for trying to bridge the disparities in accessing healthcare, especially in the hernia field for patients. This year, I had, for example, to give a talk about mindfulness in the well-being session for surgeon, which was an incredible opportunity. We often forget ourselves in those situations. We often forget that we need to fill our glass first before we give anyone else any support. And it is very important for us amongst ourselves to remind ourselves that it's very important to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, how are you today? Have that conversation. What can I do better for myself today?
And to be compassionate when the answer is, I'm not doing very well.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's that I think is the struggle. Surgery, being a physician in general, is based around the idea of self-sacrifice. And that is one of the pillars of taking care of ourselves, and the idea of the oath that we all take to do what we do. But at the end of the day, I'm a big believer that our patients are our mission and they're our purpose, but we're really the product. And your product is only as good as you are taking care of yourself. And that's been kind of a journey that I've been on. And here most recently, that has gone so far as just literally my exercise routine, which is trying to stave off neck pain, just going back to the very basics. And so things like the well-being aspect that you're discussing, I think I hope they become increasingly prevalent. Because I think it's necessary, because the job's not getting, I always tell the residents, in my experience, there's never been a step of this process that has gotten easier. It just gets different. And the stresses might be different. Whenever I was a resident, I rounded at the attending's discretion. If they wanted to round at 7 p.m., I was there at 7 p.m. If they wanted to round at 6 a.m., I was there at 6 a.m. As an attending, I get to determine when the rounds are. But there's other pressures that I never felt as a resident. And, I try to tell them, the first time you go to cut a cystic duct and you're the attending and you look around the room and nobody's going to stop you if you're about to cut the common duct. That's a level of pressure that is not replicated as a resident, and I don't know how I don't know. I mean, we can do as best we can to try to replicate that kind of. Okay, this is your decision. Are you going to cut this? But at the end of the day, I'm not going to let the resident cut a common duct just to prove a point. And everybody knows that, right? But but I think that this that discussion about the well-being and the mindfulness is so important, especially when things aren't going well.
Yes. Yeah. And we all need to think that we're human beings. We will always, we're always going to be prone to mistakes. It's very important to own our mistakes, to raise our hands and say, I'm sorry that has happened. This is what I learned from it. Mm-hmm. And it's very important to be honest with the patient, as we call it here, to do your duty of candor, but also to be honest towards the patient's next of kin and the patient's family. Mm-hmm. And having that honest conversation is extremely important.
And humbling.
Because that's gonna take you, if you're not an honest person, that's gonna cost you millions in litigations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's humbling, and it's not easy.
It is.
Yeah,
it's not easy.
It's not your, when you're sitting there, throwing yourself on the altar of self-sacrifice, as far as like, yeah, this is me. I had a patient, the last patient I saw in clinic before we recorded this is a recurring inguinal hernia of mine. Haven't had a ton, luckily, but this was one of them. And he said, at 6 weeks, I went right back to the lifting that I was doing before, and I think that's why it caused it. And I just said, that's not why your hernia recurred. Your hernia recurred because, I made a judgment error on when I was doing this. I remember that case specifically. Yeah. And, and it was an interesting look in his eyes of almost like relief. And I think the relief was that I think he had been blaming himself for this. And I'm not saying that there's not a joint responsibility for some of these complications, but this one wasn't his fault. This one was mine. And whenever you're saying that, it's not like it feels good.
No,
but it's necessary.
It's not.
But it's necessary, and it's right. And so I think that's the key. And it's just a hard thing to do.
It is, but also it's as you said, it's a very humbling thing. We're not hernia gods; we're human beings. Correct. Yeah.
No, we're hoping hernia gods help.
Yeah. And all these situations are the ones that bring us from cloud 9 down to swimming back in the water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It reins you back where you should be sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah. It's never a good thing to get too high or too low.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, one of the recurring segments of the Hernia Gods podcast is I have a segment where I call what I call the hernia hot take. And it's a chance for you to kind of give a prediction for the future of hernia surgery, or your idea on the state of hernia surgery, or anything like that. So this is your opportunity to have your hernia hot take if you choose.
It's a field that is going to progress quite a lot. I had when I started my surgical practice, I had at some point a question towards my attendee at the time, who's one of my surgical fathers. We had a patient with an obstructing colonic tumor. It was on the transverse colon, and it was invading in the stomach. It was a mess. And I said, why do we have to give the patient a stoma? Why can't we just bypass that and have a conduit, like something like a graft that we bypass it? Why do they have to deal with a stoma as well? And I said, I need to think what we can do about that. And my vision from that moment was that surgery is going to be growing organs and replacing the organs we have, the organs that are ill, replacing them with a new, proper, healthy organ. Mm-hmm. Now, I would love to think that in the future we will be able to replace the fascia with a proper strong one.
Right.
Because there are too many meshes on the market.
Yeah. Yeah. That would definitely be life changing.
Yes, because I think when you have so many products, sometimes all of them have their own role. Don't get me wrong. But it's like the same thing we had with inguinal hernia repairs. At some point, we had something like over 200 procedures that could have been done for an inguinal hernia repair. And what do we do now? Open tension-free Liechtenstein, if we do it open, or minimally invasive TEP or TAP.
Right.
So we end up doing, or Schuldeis in certain situations. So we have now a handful of them that we're practicing on a regular basis. I hope that in the future we will be able to have that structure that we try to bring to everyone through the hernia societies, where we keep things as simple as possible and the algorithms as clear as possible for everyone to understand them. And also, I'm hoping that we will be able to have the proper specialization as hernia surgeon, and not being mixed up with colorectal, upper GI, just doing that.
Right. And fantastic insights. You were talking about growing fascia, going full circle to the beginning of our discussion. If you start learning how to grow fascia, you might end up taking your mother's surgery and taking it the way of the PPI, the proton pump inhibitor. Innovate it right out of existence, which is not a bad thing. I think we would all very much welcome the opportunity to not have to operate on people that don't need it. So, well, it has been an absolute pleasure and an honor speaking to you. You talked about the people in the American Hernia Society that are enormously impressive, and I would count you among them. So it has very much been my pleasure and my honor to speak with you, and thank you so much for coming on the Hernia Gods podcast.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and it's been a pleasure meeting you, speaking with you. We'll keep in touch.
Absolutely.
Thank you for all the friends who are listening, and I hope we can bring something positive in this world. And I will always say, don't ever lose your good faith. We're here to work together, not against each other.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This wraps up another episode of the Hernia Gods podcast. Thanks for tuning in. This is Luke Elm signing off.